Hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so we'll just do a quick update in the other greenhouse, show you other things are coming on here. So to start off, we've got the dahlias. Now this one here is, as you can see, it's got loads of shoots all over it. That was one of the bigger ones. Now this one here, and this one here is the one that I split. And as you can see, this one's starting to come through. There's some sort of little shoots coming there. This one hasn't shown any sign of life yet, but I'm sure it will grow. These others are coming through quite nicely. And this is, at this stage, if we give this another 2 or 3 weeks when these get to up to here, that's when you can take cuttings. So what you do is you take a cutting off, cut it off at the bottom leaves there, so that'll carry on to grow, and then you can actually make cuttings out of those if you wish to, to duplicate them. This one here is a dahlia. This is the one that I bought. That's the purple and white one, so that one's come through. These two haven't come through as of yet, but there's time yet. Now moving on down here, this is the ochre and the mashua. Now I've actually put ochre on here, but from comments that I've seen on the internet and I've looked at various pictures, I think this is the mashua plant, which is related to the ochre, but it's not quite the same. These are the sort of the white sort of carrot shaped ones, that sort of conical shaped ones with the purple bits on the side where the little shoots come through. Now these are growing really well, as you can see. A few of these had actually shooted when I put them in, so these are the sort of the viney type ones that grow up to sort of 2 meters high, and then obviously you need a sort of structure to put those on. So they're growing really well. As you can see, the leaves, they look very much like sort of nasturtium leaves to me. They've got this three like a shamrock. You got these 3 sections to the leaves, but the fact that the stalk goes from the centre of the leaf reminds me of nasturtiums really. But they've come on. This one here has not come through yet, but apart from that, the majority of those have already shot through. Now moving on to the ochre. This has come from Tina and Jason at Allotment Upcycling. Now these look more like shamrock to me. It's a definite kind of 3-leaf structure, sort of connected in the middle. This one's sort of coming up. There's a few. This one here is just about starting to come through. This one's not done anything yet. These two haven't done anything yet. That one's just starting to come through. So I mean, they've been in about kind of 2 weeks now, and they're just starting to come through. So they're doing all right. Now the Ulluco, which is like the small potato type ones. They look like small potatoes. None of those have come through yet. I've not watered them again since I put them in, but because they are, the soil's still reasonably damp. Now they did have little chits on them, so I'm sure they will come up sooner or later. So they'll be coming through in the next week or so. So as soon as they've come through, I'm strongly assuming the leaves are going to be similar to this again. I'll show you what they look like, but that's just a quick update on what's going on in the other greenhouse. Okay, so it's at this time of year we need to start thinking about the ginger. Now I grew ginger for the first time last year, and it was one of my little experiments, and it worked out quite well. So all I've done is I've gone to a supermarket, actually went to Tesco's, and I had a look. No, sorry, it was Asda. And I had a look through the ginger that they got there. This is the ginger you can buy to eat. And what you need to look for, obviously these are the ginger shoots. Now these little sort of lumps on the side here, those are actually the sort of the chits, if you like. Now I don't know if you can see, but let's find a good one. This one here. I don't know if you can see that, but that's where the shoot's going to form there and sort of grow up like that. So in the ground it would be sort of like that, if you can imagine. So if you want to grow ginger, the ginger I grew last year was really nice, and I think there's nothing, you know, the taste from fresh gingers sort of quite incredible really compared to this sort of, you know, the sort of the dry that we're used to in the UK. So all you need to do is go to your supermarket, buy this. This cost me less than £1 really, and you can see the little chits there sort of starting to come through. Now, what I would suggest is if you do manage to get a big piece like that, don't be tempted to break it into smaller pieces. I would leave it together in one big piece and stick it in the ground, and you know, sort of grow it as one thing. What you could potentially do is cut that, but I think together it's stronger. So you'll get a sort of stronger plant for that. So I just got the pieces. I had to sort through. You know, there was a few of them that didn't have these sort of eyes on them, if you like. So what you need to make sure is you've got these sort of little growths on the side, and that's where the shoots are going to form the plant from there. And then obviously the roots will grow out, and then the tuber part of it will grow, and obviously that's the bit that you eat at the back end of the year. But this one, you can see there's loads of little sort of chits all over it. So this one I think is potentially going to be the strongest plant out of all of them. But so if you want to grow ginger, now's the time of year. Go to a supermarket, buy yourself some bits of ginger that have got these bits on. Stick it on an egg tray like I've got here, and then just put it in the greenhouse or in the shed. You don't want it to be too warm, but what you do want it to do is encourage it to shoot. So this is all I did last year. Just pop it in there like that, so they can see the light, and then they'll start to shoot. As soon as you start to see life sort of shoots, little shoots forming from here, that's when the time to put it in the ground in your greenhouse. But so that's something you can be doing now. Okay, just a quick update on the birdhouse gourd. As you can see, those two have actually come up. They come up earlier in the week, so they look very much like any other gourd at the moment. The other two haven't come up quite yet, and the four that I put in last week, those are the ones with the sort of the seeds that have been sort of sanded down a little bit. They've not come through yet, but that's to be expected. They've only been in a week, so it looks like it takes them about 2.5 weeks to germinate. As I say, those two have come through, but I will be putting, if the other two don't germinate in the next week, I'll be putting a few more in anyway, just to make sure I've got plenty of plants. Okay, so I'll do a few of the comments and questions that have come over in the last week, and we have had some fantastic comments, and I do want to say to everybody, thank you for taking the time to put comments on the channel. I really do appreciate reading them, and even if I don't get back to you by writing on the channel, what I'll do is I'll always go through any comments or questions in our next sort of commented question section, because sometimes it's not so easy to explain by writing, so it's much better to sort of verbally explain, if you like. So first one comes from Little Urban Homestead, asking about, can you take raspberry cuttings? Now I think they've got some raspberry plants already, and there's one with like a 2-foot sort of stalk on. The one thing I would say is, if you want any fruit this year, it's going to be that part that fruits. So if you do take a cutting from that, obviously you're unlikely to get any fruit this year. But if you do want to duplicate raspberries, I've personally never done it from cuttings. I've always taken, because raspberries will always kind of naturally try to multiply, and I'm constantly chopping them out, to be honest with you, because I've got a row of raspberries here and they're constantly trying to grow one way or the other. So I've got them in the sort of asparagus bed here next to it, and I'm constantly pulling out bits of root and plants and little shoots that come through. And if you do that, those are the bits that you can replant, and they'll grow in another place. So what I would suggest is, if you've got a little shoot coming out of the ground, if you sort of dig down into the ground, and obviously there's going to be a little root on there, or like a runner from the from the mother plant. If you sort of chop it off so it's got a reasonable amount of root left on it, that will most certainly grow on. If you move that, you can separate it, just chop it through with a spade or a knife, and then you can move that to another location. The other thing you can do as well is obviously separate plants. So you will get like a cluster of them coming together, and what you can potentially do is sort of chop them and sort of separate them that way. That's another way of doing it. And raspberries as well are most certainly one plant that if you if you do get any sort of raspberries that have gone too far on the bush, if you put them on the ground, they'll most certainly, you know, you will get new plants coming from the actual raspberries themselves. And typically the birds will do that for you as well. So the birds will eat a raspberry and then, you know, deposit the seed somewhere else. So you do find sort of raspberry bushes popping up all over the place, really. The one thing I would say is that I've personally never taken cuttings off a raspberry bush. There's no reason why to think you can't. So if you do cut it, what I would suggest you do is cut off a sort of 6-inch section of it, and then what you want at the bottom of that is one of the shoots where the leaves come through. Cut that off cleanly with a knife, and then put that in a pot. Reasonable sized pot. You want at least, I'd say, 4 inches of that in the ground. You don't want too many leaves on there. You want to keep it, you know, because that's where it's going to lose moisture, and if it's not got the roots to support the loss of moisture, if you like, you know, it won't strike properly. So minimise the amount of leaves on there. You want some leaves, but you know, you only want a few leaves. And then stick it down the side of a pot, and it should strike. The other way you can do is just put it in a jar of water, and you will see sort of roots forming. So there's no reason to say you can't do that. But what I would advise is if you do cut a section out of your bush that's sort of grown last year, that's the part of the bush which is going to bear fruit this year. So if you do it, you're not going to get any fruit, obviously. The next comment comes from Clayman, and he was talking about sort of homemade fertilizers. You know, there's all sorts of different things you can do, and in the past I've made quite a few different ones. Obviously nettle is comfrey is another one, and what you can do is make teas. So what you do is you cut down the comfrey leaves, and then you stew them, or not stew them really, but what you do is you put them in a tub and let them break down. They'll break down reasonably quickly, and then basically you get a sort of liquor or tea from that, and then you put that into water, 10 to 1 or something like that, and you can water that on your tomatoes and stuff. You can also do that with nettle. Nettle tends to be rich in nitrogen, so if you've got a leafy type plant, you know, you can do the same thing with nettle. So the things with nettles, what you do is you chop the nettles down. Obviously you need gloves and stuff. Chop the nettles down, then put some water with those, and then you know, you'll make like a nettle tea, and you can pour that on, water that on various things. Obviously water it down, but you can pour that on anything that's leafy, so brassicas and things like that you can put nettle on. Comfrey tends to be good for fruiting plants, so things like tomatoes, strawberries, things like that, where you want the actual fruit. Obviously a fruit is something that forms from a flower, so anything that forms from a flower, comfrey's good for. So you could potentially put it on anything that's fruiting, really. So raspberries, strawberries, tomatoes, cucumbers, any of the gourds, because that's all fruit basically. And then what else have you got? You know, and anything that you eat the fruit basically. Nettle is good for nitrogen, so that's good for things like asparagus would be one, because obviously you want the the leafy growth of that, or the things like that, things like brassicas, lettuce, or all that kind of stuff would be good for a nettle tea. The fertilizers that I use, which are natural and free to get hold of, one of the biggest ones is coffee. I use coffee grounds from Starbucks, and then I use that on a number of things for a number of reasons. Anything that's any of the brassicas get a good dosing of coffee. The rhubarb always gets plenty of coffee. The asparagus gets loads of coffee. Now coffee is very high in nitrogen, again, so that's like similar to the nettle. So anything that you're eating the leaves of, chives or anything like that, that's good to put sort of coffee on that. The other good use for nitrogen rich sort of fertilizers, if you like, is to aid the sort of the decomposition of stuff, like so. If you've got a compost, or you've put a mulch on top of something like I have with the rhubarb, which is another reason why I do it, and also the asparagus, I'll put some wood chip and straw and stuff on there. Now, what you want to do is encourage all the bacteria and the microbes in there to break down the mulch there, to to take it into the soil. and they are very rich. They need a lot of nitrogen to enable to do, everything that they do. Now, if you don't put, if you mix in a lot of manure, or which is strawy, a lot of straw or a lot of wood chip into the ground, what it will do is it'll pull all the nitrogen out of the ground. So if you put a crop in there that needs nitrogen, it's going to struggle, because the bacteria has already sort of taken the nitrogen out of the ground. So what you need to do is put that back in, which is when, if you ever put sort of anything that's strawy into the ground, or wood chip or anything like that, it's going to break down in the soil, you need to put nitrogen there as well to basically to replace what nitrogen is going to be taken out by the bacteria. So that's another good thing as well. Other fertilizers I do, obviously, I use the liquor from the wormery. So all of the vegetable matter that we've got, or a reasonable amount of the vegetable matter, goes into the wormery. Then they turn that into the sort of the juice, if you like, going into the wormery. That's also something that I use in the greenhouse or on other things to, water it down 10 to 1, water it on, and then you are much better off when you're putting sort of fertiliser on things. I think it's always better to do a little bit at a time, as opposed to sort of giving it a dose every sort of few months. You're much better off once a week, twice a week, to put something on your tomatoes, for example. They're always quite hungry for fertiliser. So if you've got tomatoes that are forming tomatoes, tomato plants that are forming tomatoes, I always think, as a rule of thumb, if you've got one truss of tomatoes on each of the plants, then you need to be once a week. You need to be putting some sort of juice from your wormery, or whatever for your your comfrey or whatever, onto your tomatoes. If you've got 2 trusses, then do it twice a week. 3 trusses, 3 times a week. That's the kind of rule of thumb that I use. And obviously other plants, it's much better to give a little bit at a time, often, than sort of give them a massive dose of whatever, and then and then not bother for another couple of months. It's much better to give them a bit at a time, I think. Next one comes from Slash, and he was talking about onions, and he was saying he's put them in a pot like I have, and then they've got warm in the greenhouse, and then he's put them out, and he's had some that have bolted. Yes, you can get a bit of that. I've never had that, to be honest with you, but I can completely understand where you're coming from, because obviously if the onions are in the greenhouse and they're nice and warm, they're going to think it's summer weather, and then if they go out into the cold again, they're going to think it's potentially the back end of the year, so they could potentially bolt. Onions typically bolt from the size rather than anything, but yeah, if you do have these sort of large swings from hot to cold, you can potentially have this sort of problem where onions bolt. Now, to be honest with you, I haven't had many onions bolt at all, really. I have had the odd one that's gone, and so there's never really been any pattern. And this comes to a comment that Muddy Boots has put in, Nigel from Wolverhampton, and he was saying about he's had onions bolting, and he doesn't use sets because apparently he grew some seed and also some sets, and all the sets bolted. I've never had that problem, Nigel. So I think onions for me typically bolt if you don't get enough water. Now the seeds may be more sort of hardy towards that, if you like, but I've always found as long as you keep your onions reasonably well watered, they won't bolt, and I've never really had a problem. Slash has also said that he's had a reasonable amount of damage in his greenhouse from mice as well. I've not had any more damage this week, to be honest with you. So all being well, I think the mouse is sort of gone off. Just a quick comment. Last week when I said I'd bring the cat up here, I did put a comment on the video, but what I meant was if a mouse smells a cat, it kind of gets scared away, so it'll go. So I wasn't expecting to sort of bring the cat up here and get the cat to catch the mouse, sort of thing. It's just the smell of the cat that will basically make the mouse sort of leave and sort of go elsewhere, sort of thing. So that's, I never like killing anything, so if I can deter mice or whatever by some means that doesn't hurt them, then obviously that's the way I'll go. Next comment comes from Brian Hubry, and he was saying that he's got a mouse-proof propagator. And from what he explained was it's basically like a box with some mesh on the top. Excuse me, a box with some mesh on the top, and then anything that's prone, like sweet peas and stuff like that, he'll put them inside there until they've sort of you know, the shoots are falling out. I always find that as soon as you've got shoots kind of that big, these are the sweet peas, as soon as they're up to sort of 2 or 3 inches high, you know, the mice aren't going to bother them. It's only when they're quite small that's when the mice will attack, because they think there's a seed in there to eat. So you know, that's the time when you need to protect them. So as soon as they get to kind of that big, you can put them out and put them outside or wherever, and you know, let them get on with it. But yeah, Brian, that was a really good you know, suggestion. If you have got problem with mice, you know, try and put them in a box. You know, even if you just put them in a box with some glass over the top or something like that, you know, that'll stop the mice getting in there. The rule that I always use, if you can get a big pen, one of those, if you can fit that into a hole, a mouse can get through it, believe it or not. And I know this might sound a bit of a wives' tale, but mice have got the skeleton of a mouse, which I guess is the, you know, the limiting factor. Basically that's the you know, it's a lot smaller than the actual mouse itself. So if you see a mouse, its skeleton side there is considerably smaller. So most certainly if you use chicken mesh or something like that, if you can get your finger through the hole in one of the mesh, a mouse will just go straight through it. So you know, if you are going to use mesh or something like that, use really fine mesh. Otherwise, the mouse will just go straight through. And make sure all of the edges are really secure, because they will, you know, sort of, you know, try. You know, they've got a good sense of smell, and they will try to find some way in if they can. Obviously, cardboard and stuff like that, they will gnaw the way through that as well if you're not careful. If they are particularly hungry. So, but yeah, Brian said live and let live, and I completely agree. You know, I do agree. Brian also put a comment on regarding space in the greenhouse, and he was saying that a lot of brassicas are a lot harder than we think, and you're right. Obviously things like purple sprouts and broccoli goes all the way through the air, etc. So if you are running short of space in your greenhouse, make a place outside, and what you can do is, as soon as you've got the plants reasonably well established, there's no reason why brassicas can't go outside. If you do get a bit of a, you know, a frost threat, what you can do is just put some fleece over for the night, just to protect them from that. But yeah, there's no reason why brassicas can't go outside if they're reasonably well established. Next comment comes from Alan Smallfield, and he was saying the amount of stuff that I do in the allotment. Are you a full-time gardener? I wish I was, but no, I'm not. I do have a full-time job which takes up 50 to 60 hours of my week. I do work reasonably hard at my professional job. So yeah, the allotment I typically spend I don't know, I try to spend about half an hour a day at this time of year. I try to come up, and half an hour goes pretty quickly, but I try to do a little job every night. I find that helps me to, you know, sort of wind down that after work. And if I am doing anything new, obviously I'll video that for the channel. But yeah, obviously, you know, as soon as you've watered the greenhouse and that, you know, that's 10-15 minutes gone, and you've had a walk around and had a look what's going on. You know, you can soon use that up. But and at the weekend, probably sort of 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours, depends on what I'm doing. You know, is spent. But that's pretty much it. You know, I have got a family as well, and there's other things going on. So yeah, I'm most certainly not a full-time gardener. And I think the art of it is planning, really, to be honest with you. What I suggest is, with an allotment or even gardening, little and often is the way to do it. What you don't want to do is sort of come up and sort of blitz it for a day, and you know, wear yourself out, and then you've just got no enthusiasm to do it again. The best thing to do is come up, spend an hour, half an hour, or whatever, and do something, and then go back down to your house and you know, rest for the rest of the night. For example, this week I've put the potatoes in, and I've put 1 or 2 rows in a day. I haven't just gone through and put all the rows in. What I've done is I've come up, put the potatoes in the row, and then hoed them up, which takes about, I don't know, 15-20 minutes. And I've put 1 row of potatoes in, or possibly 2 on a couple of the nights. I put a couple in, and that's it. And then I'll go back down. You know, and that's you know, that's the way I find is the best way to do it. So no, I don't spend too much time up here, but what I do is little and often, and I think that's the best way to garden. Okay, so it's this time of the year when you need to start putting your potatoes in, and as you can see I've already put 10 rows in. And basically the way you want to do it is mark out your row like that, get your dug well, the ground well dug so it's all rotivated and you've got plenty of manure in the ground. And then as soon as you've done that, what you need to do is along your row, every sort of 18 inches I put the potatoes in. The rows are 28 inches apart. Dig down about 9 inches or between 9 inches and a foot. Put the seed potato in there with the chit facing upwards, and then hoe the ground backwards onto on top of the potatoes. Now I only ever hoe the potatoes up one way because that's basically labour saving. As you can see, I'll start at that end and hoe that way, and then work my way down the plot. Now, if you want a detailed description of how to do this, then if you look at April part 4 of last year, I explain in great detail. But basically what you need to do, as I say, dig in the muck at the beginning of the year, make sure the ground is well rotivated and weed free, put your potatoes in, and then as soon as you've done that, hoe them up. Whilst you're putting your potatoes in, you can put hawthorn and blood, you can put growmore, and you can put any ash. Any wood ash is really good. As you can see here, we've got wood ash on there, so any wood ash that I burn in the burner, I save that and I spread that along the rows as well. Put that all in and then hoe the potatoes up. So the potatoes actually end up around 18 inches below the ground. Ground level is obviously slightly higher than the sort of the dips between the rows, as it were. And the one thing that I have done differently this year is, I don't know if you've seen every other one, I've got seep hoses dug in. So they're actually on top of the potatoes. Then I've sort of hoed the potatoes in. So this hose goes along this row and then back. You can just see it looping over there, and then it loops back along this one. So every second row I've got the hose adapter. So what I can do is I can connect the hose to there in the year, and what that will do is it'll water the roots of the potato, but it won't get the tops wet. Now that's quite important, because what you should never do is water the tops of potatoes, because what that will encourage is mildew to form on the leaves or the stems of the potato, and that will encourage potato blight. Potato blight's a fungal problem that basically attacks the leaves and the stalks of the potato plant, and if left untreated, what it will do is it'll go down to the potatoes and destroy your potato crop. So what you want to do is make sure that the ground's nice and wet, so the potatoes have got lots of moisture to go at, but also at the same time you're not getting the leaves or the stalks wet, because that's what's going to cause the blight to attack. Now, in exactly the same reason, that's why you don't want to plant your potatoes too close together. Now, if you look at the Royal Horticultural Society, they recommend that main crop potatoes go 30 inches apart, and the plants are, I think, off the top of my head, I think it's 16 inches apart. I do it slightly differently. What I do is I put the rows 28 inches apart, so the rows are 2 inches closer together, but I actually plant the potatoes about 18 inches apart. The reason to do this is so that you've not got too many potato tops in one place, so you've got a reasonable amount of airflow going through, and again that'll keep the tops of the potatoes sort of moisture free, as it were. So the only other thing to say is I grow kestrel potatoes, and that's the variety. Now kestrel is a second early, but I grow it as a main crop potato. The reason I do that is it's reasonably slug resistant, and I get a reasonable amount of slugs in the ground. And I've grown Wiltshire, King Edward's, Maris Piper in the past, and I've found that you get a reasonable amount of slug damage on there, where with the kestrel I don't. So if you've grown potatoes before and you're getting a reasonable amount of slug damage on your potatoes, I would suggest you look at the varieties that are more slug resistant, and kestrel is one of those. As I say, even though it's a second early potato, I grow it as a main crop, and if you look at the potatoes I got last year, you know, you do get some really good big baking sized potatoes. Last point, on some of my seed potatoes I only had one chit, so in that instance what I do is I put 2 potatoes in the same hole, 2 small potatoes in the same hole with a chit on each one, then they'll grow together. If there's multiple chits on the potatoes, I typically knock them off till there's only 2 or 3, depending on how strong the potato is. but on average I'd say I've got 3 chits on every potato, and there's a potato every kind of 18 inches going along each of the row. So there's somewhere in the region of 15 potatoes in each row, and of course there's 11 rows, so that's 165 potatoes I've put in total. So that's the potatoes. So I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. Don't hesitate to put any comments or questions that you've got below, and I'll always get back to you. And I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Allotment Garden.